Clinton Yates, Harry Lyles, Frank Isola, Bill Barnwell. You can do it. All-time team on an all-time run. Maybe you'll say so. What UConn did in this tournament, this was a hippopotamus meets watermelon situation. Nom, nom, nom. Let's go around the horn. Hungry hippos. Great game.
I go like, what?
No illegal screens in that game.
First back-to-back in 17 years, but to do it in this era of the game, what that means, and what Danny Hurley is putting together as UConn wins its 6th in 26 years. That's not a dynasty, that's an era. That's not an era, that's just the game of college basketball. This team in particular, how dominant through the tournament. Every win, again, by double digits. The all-tournament team was Zach Edey, and the rest was UConn. Castle, Clingan, Spencer, Newton. So I asked a national panel, how all-time is this UConn team? How all-time was this run as they crowned themselves champions over Purdue? Frank Isola, around the horn to you.
Oh, it's definitely all time. I think if you look at Florida with Joakim Noah, Al Horford, and that crew, they came back for another year. Same thing with Duke, with Bobby Hurley, Danny's older brother, Christian Laettner, of course, Grant Hill. They came back. 5 of UConn's top 8 scorers were gone from last year's team. And you mentioned it, Tony. They're on a 12-game winning streak in the NCAA tournament, and every game was won by double digits. That means no call, no lucky break on a foul call that maybe wasn't a foul call, no miracle shot like Christian Laettner had against Kentucky. They absolutely steamrolled the competition. And think about what they did to Purdue last night. Forget about making 7 3-pointers. Purdue only attempted 7 3-pointers. They defend, they're disciplined, they run an NBA-style offense. That is a big-time team. That is definitely an all-time team.
All-time team, says Frank Isola. Bill Barnwell, around the horn to you.
This was one of the all-time great game plans in the history of college basketball. Purdue was one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country. They said, Zach Edey, you get yours. Set a record. We don't care. Score as much as you want. We're going to take away the three-pointer, and they did to an incredible extent. They were in control throughout the game, up by double digits. The thing I love the most about them, how they broke the press. Purdue was so different. They tried so hard to get a press going in the second half. UConn just ran through it like it was a high school press. It was so controlled and so impressive. To me, the only hole you can poke in them is they did not play a 1 seed or a 2 seed until the final. Otherwise, this is one of the most impressive runs we've ever seen.
Well, you can't play another 1 seed until you get to the Final Four. I mean, that's how that plays out typically. All time, though, is it more impressive than the Duke back-to-back? More impressive than the Florida back-to-back? To you, Bill Barnwell, real quick, and then we'll get to Yates.
I would say yes. I think they are the best back-to-back team in the bunch.
Clinton Yates, how about you?
Yeah, it's more impressive to me, and for no other reason than just the longevity of how these players maintain this type of advantage over the course of the season. Never mind the tournament. I remember back when they played Marquette, it was like, ooh, number 1, number 4, bang them out by 32. Did not stop rolling until they got to the tournament. So for me, I think back to like the 2014-2015 Kentucky team that could not hold on and ended up losing in the Final Four. To actually be able to execute it when everybody expects you to win, to me, was the most impressive part about all this, because frankly, the basketball wasn't that exciting because they didn't have any real comps. So good for them.
Basketball wasn't exciting because they were so good, which may be the highest praise you could give to a team. I don't think UConn will care about that. So again, this team, not to be prisoners of a moment, but Harry Lyles, were we looking at back-to-back wins as dominating fashion they did, an all-time team in college basketball?
So it's all time, but under the current circumstances, because this should seem impossible given today's game with the transfer portal and everything else going on, because they did lose 3 guys to the NBA and still maintained a level, and I think this is the key here, Tony, a level of dominance that was historic. They are only the 2nd team that has ever won by 15 or more points in every single one of their NCAA tournament games since the 67-69 UCLA Bruins, right? Like, that is an all-time great team that comes to mind. And again, this team the dominance they played with. This Purdue team dominated every team that they saw in the tournament up until they ran into UConn. And I think most of us felt coming into this game that UConn was still going to dominate them because that's what they've done all season. They are only the third team to win 37 games and they title in NCAA tournament history. So no matter which way you want to put it, this is absolutely an all-time.
So there it is. I mean, you put them in the same breath with UCLA of the 1960s. Frank, I'll give you the last word for that historic look.
And think about it, too. The whole idea of this one and done, which certainly you could win with great players, but now South Carolina on the women's side, and now you see what UConn's done, you get transfers. You're getting players that are 22, 23 years old. It is a lot different when you get them almost as ready-made players. It's not so much player development as it is just coaching them into a team and trying to win. What UConn has done, again, Tony, think about the players you talked about. Grant Hill, Bobby Hurley, Christian Lee. They were together for 4 years.
So I'm not following you. Are you saying this is a point in their favor, that this is more difficult? Or are you saying they're getting ready-made players and it's...
I think it's still more difficult because you just have basically 1 year to try to put it together.
Mm-hmm. More on this UConn team, and we have to talk about Dan Hurley. He walks the walk, he talks the talk, he jaws the jaw, he gesticulates the gesticulate, he's pushing his own players, he's having words with opposing players. There's always a moment with a fan down the tunnel in the vomitorium of an arena. There's always a net that seems to be cut down. Harry Lyles Jr., are you ready to call Dan Hurley the best coach in the men's game?
Absolutely, and if they keep on winning, people are going to get sick of it because all this stuff is endearing until people get tired of you winning. I think, though, one of the greatest compliments that you can pay to any coach is to say that his players have taken on the identity of the coach, and you saw that from this UConn team. You saw that the energy, as soon as the ball tipped off, Cam Spencer was talking all the trash in the world. He was getting Zach Edey's face. Dan Hurley was doing it himself. And it's the type of energy that this team, whether it was in the regular season or in the tournament, carried on and on and on, that was so dominant that it suffocated even a team in Purdue that probably would have won the tournament in most other years.
So, best coach in the men's game? Yes or no?
Yes.
Glenn Yates, you?
Yes, it's almost impossible to say no, and I think part of the reason is because not only who he is individually, but he embodies what a modern coach is supposed to look like. Sometimes you hear about these old guys, these football dudes or whatever, even on the basketball side, who don't read emails or they have no real touch with what is going on with the rest of society. Hurley's a guy out there talking about how he goes to therapy to keep his feelings under control. He actually interacts with his own fans and other fans, sometimes to a fault, but he just seems like a real person who cares in a way that is bigger than just, I'm the head coach, you're going to do what I say. If I'm looking to create a program with somebody, a Hurley type is what I'm going for if I'm an AD at this stage.
You think he goes over the line sometimes? He was literally over the line last night.
I like it. Yeah, he's
scoring a
pushing kids
player
on the
into
floor.
a play,
That was funny, but I like the guy. I think he brings something to the college basketball game from a personality standpoint as a head coach we haven't had in a long
Bill
time.
Barnwell, best coach in America?
Yes, it's not a crime to have fun. It's not a crime to coach like you're a player. Danny Hurley feels like an extension of that team, to Harry's point, where, you know, he's out there jawing with other players. He's out there working the refs. He's making jokes from the press conferences. That's not against the law. You don't have to be annoying to be a good coach. And I guarantee every single AD in the country watched that game last night and thought, I wish our coach was a little more like Danny Hurley. And I think that is most
Every fan base in his conference could say, yo, he had some words with me while we were leaving a game, though. Frank Isola, on your overall view of Dan Hurley, the coach.
It's amazing. So Purdue the last 3 years was knocked out by New Jersey, whether it was St. Peter's, FDU, and last night it's Jersey City's Danny Hurley. I knew him when he was a high school kid. This was a kid that was in his cradle and it was around basketball. And remember, he lived in the shadow not only of his famous father, but also his famous brother. Has Danny always been cocky? Yes. Has he always been confident? Yes. That seems to play. And I'll tell you, you ask NBA people, they will tell you he is the best coach right now not coaching in the NBA.
I throw Dawn Staley's name out there as well, but I hear what you're saying. Frank Isola.
Nice.
Zach Edey, 37-10, did everything he could. I said yesterday, Zach Edey has been underrated, underreported by the people on this here show. I gave them mutes, I give you mutes. The two-time player of the year, and no zhuzh from you as he finishes his career. I'm here for some zhuzh for Zach Edey. Bill Barnwell, how should his college career be remembered? And then after that, how you see his future in the NBA.
One of the best college players of all time, a college Hall of Famer. The last two-time AP Player of the Year was Ralph Sampson. Yeah. That's how far back you have to go to find someone with his resume. I know the game changed. People graduate early, people leave early. The game has changed since then. But we're talking about a player who accomplished everything you could without winning a title. So now, as he enters the pro game, 7'4" is still 7'4". It's going to change the way people defend you. It's going to prevent teams from playing small ball lineups against him. But we saw last night in the second half of that game, UConn was able to get to the rack easily and get points. If that happens at the NBA level, he's not going to last very long. He has to be a plus defender to survive as an NBA player.
Frank Isola?
Yeah, Bill's 100% right. They just attacked the glass. Even though he's 7'4", guys do go after him. But in terms of college play, he's a terrific kid, terrific player. He put up numbers that only in a championship game that only Bill Walton and Lou Alcindor put up. But the difference was they had better teammates. His teammates scored 23 total points in the game and only had 1 3-pointer. Great, great college player, easy to root for. In the NBA, for me, he'll be a backup. You got to guard the pick and roll in the NBA. If you're a big man, I think he'll struggle with that a bit.
Ira Lyles Jr.
Tony, he's easily one of the most dominant college basketball players that we've ever seen. I think a lot of people have a hard time grasping that because he does not play like a modern big man, and that's why a lot of people don't love his NBA prospects. But he's only been playing basketball since he was a sophomore in high school, and he's already gotten this good. I would even argue he's gotten more athletic from last year to this year. He had stuff in his game that you just did not see from him. So if you're an NBA team and you want to pick him late in the second round and give him a shot and see what you can teach him, I think it's worth it.
You think it's second round, though? You don't even think it could be in the first round. But my question is, could there be value in a guy who does something that nobody else does? And he's also, of course, well, in the college game this year, there were half a dozen guys who were 7'2" and taller. They were all averaging 2 points and 2 rebounds. He was the player of the year for the second year in a row. He is different, Clinton Yates. How will you remember him?
I think to piggyback off Harry's point that he hasn't played that much basketball is what you look for if you're an NBA team. You say, I can teach him more game. I can teach him to have, frankly, what I view as a weakness, stronger actual hands so that guards aren't plucking the ball off of him when he's actually in the paint. I do think there is something to work with here. But coming out the gate right now, out of the Big Ten, I don't think I see him as a first-round player. And that's no knock on him. You just got to teach him more. But again, as I say all the time, that's what the coaches are there for.
Thanks for your thoughts on that. Sometimes I get frustrated because it's always projecting forward. The NBA is a different sport. Allow somebody to be one of the greats of all time. Again, it's only Walton and it's only Sampson, who were 2-time Player of the Year. Had a great game. Just wasn't enough for the Boilermakers. UConn champs. Buy or sell is next for us. MLB pitcher injuries. Bieber, Strider, Loaiziga, Perez, Valdez, all going down this last week to join a massive list. An enormous debate in the sport right now. MLBPA says the pitch clock is leading to more injuries. MLB says it's what pitchers have done to their arms and bodies to increase spin rate and velocity, among other things. Here's 2 prominent pitchers I want you to hear, Garrett Cole and then Justin Verlander.
When I read the response from MLB, I didn't think it was very thorough. We are going to really understand the effects of what the pitch clock is maybe 5 years down the road. But to dismiss it out of hand I didn't think that was helpful.
The biggest thing is the style of pitching has changed so much. Everybody's throwing as hard as they possibly can and spinning the ball as hard as they possibly can.
Clinton Yates, how do you consider it all?
I look at this as the culmination of 15-plus years of scouting and development changing in baseball for the worse. Nowadays, everything is all about top velo, max effort, spin rates, and the numbers you're getting on your fastball, basically. And that has completely changed the abilities of guys to just be pitchers. It is affecting arms. It is messing things up from a developmental standpoint that happens way before the big leagues. For those worried about the pitch clock, I kind of think you're panicking at the wrong disco here. There are things at the lower levels of the game that are affecting things as we move up, and we're looking at it right now. I think Verlander has nailed this exactly.
So if I follow you here, the statistical upkeep of spin rate and velocity and then going into, the pitching machine and looking at all the numbers and seeing them rise over the last 10 years and what players had to do to their body to contort their body in a certain way, inverted W's and the such, has led to these injuries.
It has shortened people's abilities to have long careers because the human body is just not meant to do that much throwing. That's why kids are getting TJs in high school now to try to ward them off for their post-secondary.
Harry Lyles Jr., how do you see it? Is it about a pitch clock? Is it about the spin rate torque that the bodies are going through?
Tony, here's a wild idea. It might be a little bit of everything. This is not a new issue necessarily, but when you hear all these arguments being made, you can see how all of these things could affect a pitcher's arm negatively. And to Clinton's point, yes, like the overhand throwing motion is not a natural one. And I think you could say, especially once these guys get to the big leagues, it's made worse because we're faster and stronger than we've ever been as people, as athletes. So I think the one thing that we really need to see here, as opposed to the union or Major League Baseball trying to be right, they both need to find out what is right so we can get beyond this and continue to grow the game that it doesn't seem like it's on a great path right now.
I agree with Garrett Cole when he did say, why did we go from 20 seconds on the pitch clock with runners on base to 18? Does the 2 seconds really make that much of a difference? I think that was a mistake. But to Clinton's point, I think what Verlander is saying is true. Now they want guys gripping the ball so hard because everything is about spin rate. So it's all about spin rate, velocity, and it's killing everyone's arm. It's almost as if starting pitching is the baseball equivalent of running back in the NFL. Can you really invest this much money in guys where it seems like everyone's getting hurt?
No, Barnwell.
The meta's changed. It's all about strikeouts. It has been for a while now. Go back to how the league has changed. Shorter appearances for starters, more relievers throwing max effort. Fastball velocity up from 91.8, the average in 2008, 94.2 now. And Justin Verlander said this. He can't pitch to contact anymore because since the ball changes happened a few years ago, he thinks every hitter can go opposite field for a home run. So if you incentivize putting the ball in play, incentivize longer stretches of starting pitching, you're going to get the results you want and you're going to get fewer injuries.
Well, it's been multiple generations, though, where older generations said pitchers are getting hurt more frequently and guys don't go as long as they used to go. And Nolan Ryan used to throw 150 pitches. That has been going for a long time. The pitch clock is only for 2 years here, and the time of game we've got now is back to what it was 20, 30 years ago. But guys, we're not getting injured with that time of game, which would suggest it's the academies that are teaching new ways to pitch in some way. From my just neutral observation, we'll move on. What caused the solar eclipse yesterday? The ratings for Iowa, South Carolina. Nearly double the national title game, Iowa LSU last year. Most watched basketball game of any kind in 5 years. Higher than every baseball game in that time. Higher than every hockey game in the history of the NHL. Only football and the Olympics see that number. Harry, what does it mean? How sustainable is it?
It's sustainable, depending on the number. I think that's going to vary by each year, and I think that's natural among any sports. But to me, the thing that really changed women's basketball was not just Caitlin Clark and her stardom, but to me, the 2021 COVID season is where things really changed because it really brought out and shined a light on the inequities that we saw from the men's game to the women's game. And once that was brought to light and changes started being made, like, I don't know, putting the March Madness branding on the women's tournament and acting like it matters, people have since responded appropriately, and now you're seeing people invest in it the way that they should.
I don't think it's sustainable. I mean, Caitlin Clark to me is a phenomenon, much like Zion Williamson was his 1 year. I mean, casuals were watching this. My sister doesn't know what day it is. Said to me, I got to get home at 3 o'clock because Caitlin Clark is playing basketball. This was something that everyone fell in love with. It's just too bad that a couple of current and former WNBA players are upset that we took so much joy
Let's
in watching
put that to the side for a second. But you don't believe it's unprecedented growth. That would suggest that you can't keep that up.
Thank you.
Okay, that's what you're saying. Bill Barnwell, how about you?
It's not sustainable in the terms of they're not going to have 18 million people watching the finals next year.
Right.
But this ceiling is gone. The idea that you can't put it on because no one's going to watch, that conversation is over and over for good. More people are going to watch next year than ever have before on an average basis.
Then Yates.
Do people know what sustainability is? Of course it's sustainable. They built on that to get to where we are right now. And on top of that, it's an imperative. And to that point, I would like to implore media organizations to understand this is a growth point for this industry. Get more people to cover women's sports. Put more eyeballs on it. The access matters in terms of people's ability to connect to the sport. This cause is worth it.
You still got to get people to watch it.
They are watching it. Frank, ask your sister.
Yes.
No, they were watching Caitlin Clark, Clinton. They were watching Caitlin Clark. Come on now. You know that.
Yates, Barnwell, showdown next. Yesterday, John Calipari walking his dog in a stroller. Today, he said goodbye to Kentucky. Said it's time for the program to have a new voice. Danny Hurley says Kentucky's not the job for him. Can't afford a divorce. That's a pretty good one-liner. Nate Oates, a firm no, too. He says he's staying at Alabama. Is that the right call? Clinton, is Bama a better job than Kentucky?
I think for a certain type of person it is. The Kentucky head coach basketball job is almost like the Alabama head coach football job in the sense of so many eyeballs are on you. If you don't win, nobody cares. A lot of folks aren't up for that pressure. You're making millions anyway. Might as well do it somewhere where people aren't, harassing you while you're walking your dog.
Yates? That's Bill Barnwell now.
Some of the folks who are that crazy happen to be coaches at the college level. And you want to have the most opportunity, the most resources. You are always going to have more resources as the lead in a basketball school like Kentucky is, as opposed to the number 2 in a football school like Alabama is. The Kentucky job is more exciting than the Alabama job.
I just see schools. That's all I see. And I see Clinton Yates. FaceTime.
Last night, Cincinnati Reds infielder Elly De La Cruz managed to get around the bags for an inside-the-park home run after a misplay in center field by the Brewers. After the game, he was asked why base running is his favorite part of the game, and he said, because I like it and because fans like it. Thank you, Elly, for stating the obvious. Base running is the most underrated part of the game in general. And as the president of Base Running Twitter, I want to invite you to remind folks, when you're at the game and dudes are burning it around the dirt, that's when the most fun happens. Watching balls leave the yard is one thing, but the excitement around the bags, everything that happens in that regard, that's what made me fall in love with the game. And I'm glad that a big leaguer is saying it out loud. Good job, Elly De La Cruz.
Thank you, Clinton Yates. We're off for the Masters. Make a pick, guys. Let me hear it. A 143.5-hour break.
Rory!
Rom.
Hey.